All right, so we're going to start. So good afternoon, good morning, everybody, depending on where you are. So my name is Nicolas de Beco. I'm part of the Oracle for Startups, and I'm responsible for the benefits we provide to the startup in our program. One of these benefits, obviously, is the ability to talk to customers and have access to Oracle customers. It is the main challenge when we talk to startups is the access to corporation, access to customer. How do I talk to customer? How do I sell my solution to a large enterprise? So today I have two really great panelists with me. One coming from the startups, Veera Johnson. She's a co-founder and chief commercial officer of Circulor. And LeeAnn Murray, who is our chief information officer from Manulife, the global wealth and assets management side. So if I may ask, can we get an introduction of Veera first? Veera, do you mind to introduce a little bit yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, Nico. Hi, everyone. Yeah. So I started my career in the public sector all those years ago, and it was in various roles, including economic development. Actually, my favorite time from that period was introducing Joanna Lumley to Open the Lights in Blackpool. I then went on to become a senior partner in a consulting firm. So I've been in the corporate environment as well and specialized in helping major corporates and government organizations use IT to deliver business change and business transformation. I then went on to create a spin-out business as a project, which became ProcServe, an e-commerce business, which I ran as CEO and founder for about 10 years, which was then bought by Basware in 2015. I tried the retirement route for 2 years, got bored, and here I am with my second venture with Doug, who's my co-founder, on Circulor, which is a provenance and traceability platform, which is super exciting.
That's awesome. LeeAnn?
Thank you, Nico and Veera. So I've been in the industry, in the asset management, capital markets industry for over 20 years. And I've worked at companies, I'm sure, which is known to a lot of people on the call, RBC, JP Morgan, MetLife, and Bank of Butterfield in Bermuda. Currently today, I'm at Manulife as the Chief Information Officer supporting the wealth and asset management. And basically, we're in 17 different countries supporting retail, institutional and retirement technology. But I think what has been constant in my career has been transformation and change, whether it's moving to the cloud, bringing in a new platform, integrating, building out a data lake, introducing new trading platforms, similar to Veera in a startup. The focus has really been on transformation. So very happy for the discussion here today.
That's awesome. I mean, we really have two great panelists. I mean, the amount of knowledge and experience is definitely unique. So I'll start with Veera. So I'll go through a couple of questions, maybe 6 or 7 questions, and then we'll open it to the Q&A. You can actually log already your questions in the Q&A. I can review it and then ask directly that question to the panelists. So the first question, and really going into the details of this conversation. So with Veera, we'll start. Veera, I know well, Circulor, you have landed some large corporation. When did you know, with your experience, when is the right time to approach a large customer? Because I mean, often we say we have one chance to prove ourselves. So when did you know, was it a size, was it the maturity of the solution, or is it because you had the right contact at the right time?
Sure, it's a great question, and there's lots of parts to it. I would say that if I take a step back, part of this as a startup is to remind yourself that you need to be patient and not get too frustrated that it takes a long time to sell into corporates, because clearly you have to get to the right people in the right order and have the right conversation with them. So with that in mind, and also understanding that the corporate will have very strict procurement processes. So therefore you need to accept that that is the process and you have to follow it. But the things that helped us actually get there faster was that, for example, partnering with Oracle, for example, helped us be able to present ourselves as a much faster scalable platform. What we also did was we spent quite a bit of time researching the market to understand what new technologies there were out there that would help us solve old school business problems. We spent about 18 months doing that. Once we'd understood that language and understood where we really could make a difference, we then went ahead and built a prototype platform using our own funds and our own time. We then went back to the corporates that we were talking to, for example, Volvo, for example, Daimler, where we showed them the platform that we had and what it was capable of achieving. And we spoke in a language that resonated with their business problem and their business challenge. And we fielded a team of people that had the previous credibility and track record in history. So that meant that we were having conversations at the C-level very, very early on. That was when we knew that we were ready to open up discussions into putting together a proposal that was properly qualified, that we knew the client wanted, that we knew what their price points were. And it was at that point, that's when we first started our signature of the first 2 anchor clients.
Very good. I mean, so LeeAnn, I'm going to reverse the question to you. I mean, you've been in a C-level for quite a bit of time, and I know you from other experience, but your knowledge and your understanding of innovation, how do you decide to partner with startups? I mean, when do you know this is the right startup to spend time? And then, the most important thing is, how do I get in front of you? I mean, you're managing a significant amount of people. So how do we get to your level to be able to have you here and pitch your solution?
Yeah, no, so I think it's a great question. I think I've approached it from a couple of different ways, right? I think startups help challenge the status quo. So one of the things that I've hosted in the last couple of years, so I've been at Manulife for 3 years, and really startups drive new ideas and a different perspective on how we face different challenges, whether it's employees, advisors, customers, et cetera. So we've been hosting twice a year a hackathon with internal employees, and we invite startups to participate. The last 2 hackathons we hosted were in 5 countries over 2 days. And the partnership that we saw from the partners, the startups, was amazing. A couple of things to think about when coming into an enterprise. I think it's important to know the company, know the industry, the products, and you also need to be aligned with the values. I mean, is this a company you want to do business with? And really be able to focus on understanding the problem. What are you solving? Because as a startup, we don't know your technology, but if you can speak to the needs of solving, for a product and show an outcome, I think that really goes a long way. But I think what I've seen with some startups, they will come in and do a generic pitch, but when they come in and speak to you about your company and how they can help you, and they make it more personal, I think that goes a long way.
That's very good. I mean, Veera, can you relate to that? I mean, this. So you mentioned Daimler and Volvo. Did you have a specific pitch to the car manufacturing business? I mean, how did you get to that knowledge to be able to position your solution to actually what the customer is looking for?
Absolutely, totally agree with what LeeAnn was saying, and in particular, the thing that it's a frustration of mine as well, is that if you're not specific about what you're selling and why you're selling it and the benefits to a client, you will never get their attention. So we spent a huge amount of time and effort, possibly over 18 months, just understanding the specifics of battery production in the electric vehicle manufacturing process. So we had a very, very specific, very timely conversation to have with the client, which meant that we were banging on open doors with them. And building trust is also a huge component, part of this. And that's something that LeeAnn also alluded to, is that in order to sell into corporates, you have to convince them that you understand the organization, you understand their complexity, and you speak in a language that they would believe that you know what you're doing, and therefore you can scale up and meet their demands at their timeframes. The other part of what you have to remember as well is that you're not just selling into one person in the organization. It's called multi-level selling. So you're selling into different points of the organization and you're having slightly different conversations, but with the same end objective in mind. So you might talk to a procurement lead for a specific reason to understand the procurement process, to convince them that you meet all of their supply capability credentials. You might be speaking to the CFO about the business case that the solution that you're selling gives to them. You might be speaking to the CTO to show how easy your platform is to embed into their existing systems without creating disruption. So you have to think in a very account planning way to be able to put together a single picture of the different levels that you have to sell into. And once you have your internal champion, that champion then becomes the person that helps you sell and close the contract.
Yeah. Now, you said a lot of things in this response, Veera. I mean, there's a couple of things I would like to ask LeeAnn. One is, how do I know much better your business, and how can I pitch to your business, right? Do you publish information that we can reach, can get, and then start, adapting your pitch based on your information? That's the first question. The second question is, Veera, you talk about all the different person that we need to sell into. So, in the past, we are talking about technical buyer, business buyer, and obviously at the end, the financial buyer. Is that, LeeAnn, when you buy into a startup, are you the internal sponsor for all these different phases? So that's the two questions I'd like to ask.
Okay, so, I think you need definitely, when going into a large enterprise, I think to Veera's point and your point, you need to sponsor. I mean, there is an element of risk because startups don't have, whether, depending on what seed funding they're at, how long they've been in the industry. So I think they really need, the biggest challenge with a large enterprise is the complexity, and whether you're going through procurement, a business lead, technology, et cetera, it can be very complex. So to help maneuver getting through, the complexity, I think it's key that you have a sponsor of some sort from one of those areas. And then the other question was about what information. I think there's a lot of information that you can get publicly, whether it's an annual report, whether it's business strategy, some of the things that I've been listening to as you go out and look at different vendors, you always go to their website, right? And you leverage LinkedIn to see who knows who's working where. So there's a lot of research that you can do just publicly to better understand, how you're pitching. But I think, you have to know the industry. You have to know their go-to-market strategy, whether it's B2B, B2C. I think the one thing as a startup going into a large enterprise, you have to be patient. I think the real advantage with startups is you control the decision and the time it takes to make a decision. In large enterprises, you look at the organizational structure, it may take longer to get approval. So I think there's got to be a level of patience and willingness to have skin in the game once you're willing to make that investment, because it doesn't always happen overnight. And another thing that I've seen worked, if you really believe in your solution, I think partnering with a proof of concept or an ideation sometimes will accelerate the adoption of coming into a larger enterprise. So I think you've really got to feel it out because it's a relationship that you're trying to build, and the relationship is longer than a day.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100% with that. So Veera, in your case, I mean, you're looking after sales in your organization, and you manage the other startups that you sold. How do you look at forecasts when you start, for example, an activity with Daimler, where the sales cycle is going to be a lot longer than a smaller company, I'm assuming. How do you manage, your company, the activity of your company, and the focus really at the end of the day of your company on landing this large corporation?
Sure. So what we did was we spent a bit of time trying to create what I would call an account plan or a go-to-market plan for a target set of clients. So we had, from memory, when we started this journey, we had a target of maybe 10 clients, all in the same sector. And we tried to limit our resources so that we didn't try absolutely every sector. We knew that we had a specific niche selling and a narrative that was specific enough for us to be able to focus all of our limited effort into getting into those clients. And once we'd created a go-to-market plan for them, a sales account plan for them, we consciously targeted our personal networks, our previous employers, our previous suppliers, our acquaintances, their friends and family, to actually get introductions into the right parts of the organization. So the power of the network is something that we shouldn't underestimate. So that really helped. Once we had a prototype to demonstrate, we used a language that LeeAnn referred to, which was we talked about prototypes and proof of concepts, which was a way of de-risking the conversation in the client's mind, that we knew what the challenges were, that we could demonstrate that the solution of the platform would work in their context and in their workflow scenario. And that we'd also thought about the ability to scale up to address some of the future concerns that they might have when we actually switched the platform on for live. And what we also did was, and again, it's a common mistake that I've seen in so many different startups, is that they don't feel the best team, and the best team in this case could be the CTO, it could be the founding team. It needs to be the team that is leading this, so the client feels nurtured and important, and that we care about this enough that we're putting our best people forward.
I hear that. So LeeAnn, this is bringing me another point, right? And this is my French side here, and the critical aspect is when you see the founder, when you see the CTO into a pilot, is that a red flag for you? Do you identify that as a red flag, meaning that they don't have a large team to be able to scale and bring the top people to address your need? Or do you feel, well, they're trying to bring the best people for this deal? I mean, is there any type of red flags you look at in this type of situation?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think I take it they're bringing the best people to the table. They really want to partner, and as they partner and build that level of trust, they're going to bring the right people. I think the one thing that we need to be realistic about is the CTO or the CEO is not always going to be at the table. So I think it's also important, in conjunction with them coming to the table, that they bring the team that will support, and that team would have the full support of the CTO or the CEO. So I think it speaks, I don't necessarily see that as a red flag. I think it's more of a commitment. I'm here to basically, show you the product, tell you about it, show the vision, because, sometimes you're limited to who has the vision of the company, right? I think that's really important. There's today, but there's also the future that we need to be thinking about. What is the roadmap? And whether the roadmap is 30, 60, 90 days, there needs to be that vision, because, when enterprises invest in technology, it's never short term. These are partnerships for 3, 5, 10 years, and in some cases for life. So.
And that brings me to this great point is, how do you know if this startup is going to survive, And I mean, you're making that commitment. I mean, I know your shop well. I mean, you're making commitment with large editor of software, pretty much very established company. The risk of taking a startup on your activities where you don't change your system so often, it's probably in your risk matrix. So right. How do you establish that? I mean, this is the art of it, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think the one thing we need to think about is, how do you assess the risk, to your point? And I think really a PowerPoint presentation doesn't really speak to the risk, right? And I know every startup will come with a PowerPoint. I really think there's value in partnering, with building out, whether it's a proof of concept, whether it's an idea, but really working closely with the enterprise team for, whether it's 3 to 6 weeks, and then based on the success of that, make that criteria for moving forward to the next phase. And that's why I said initially, working with any startup of a large, at a large enterprise, you have to be patient and you have to be willing to put skin in the game. I think the other thing that would help is, who are their client base? Do they have existing clients? How organized are they when they come into the office? Or do they have a lot of people dependencies, like Bob is with another client today, so he's not available, so we have to move this out 2 weeks. So when you make a commitment, you have to stick to it, and you have to time box the proof of concept, because that will really tell you the startup's ability to deliver. There will be other questions that will come down the road, their ability to scale, the roadmap, et cetera. But, initially kicking off something, I think that's really important, because as an individual, you are taking on the risk for the broader enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you will be attached to that innovation. So the risk is on you now. It's not anymore on the startup necessarily. So Veera, I think this is ultimately what we're trying to address here, is how do you prove to a corporation that you are able to scale, that you are able to deliver not on a short term on providing the solution that is a really tactical solution, but actually try to install yourself into a long-term relationship. So obviously you have experience, and it doesn't have to be specific with your account planning, but can you share a couple experience that have worked, and maybe something that didn't work, and maybe that you wish you did differently?
Sure, great question. There are some examples that I will use. The essence is what LeeAnn referred to, is that you put your best team forward first to show commitment. And when you get to the point where you're actually running your pilot, leave the team that has the capability to actually make it happen and keep checking in. So focus in the early days on building that relationship and gaining their trust, and showing that the commitment will last for the duration of not just the proof of concept or the ideation, but that you're there to take the project to the next level. And when you start those conversations, show and practically demonstrate what your development roadmap looks like, the fact that you've thought about a scale up both in terms of volume of usage and size of client requirement, that you've thought about managing through disasters, because they will happen, so that you've thought about how the platform will continue to work if, for example, something goes down, how you are going to manage things around data protection and managing the risk around data transfer and data change. So think like a corporate when you're looking at those areas of risk. So think about the technology risk, think about the people and continuity risk, think about the hiring challenges, and have early stage 6-month plan, 1-month plan, so you can actually talk your client through that. And as you start to take on more clients, keep adapting those plans, because inevitably once you land your first anchor project and anchor client, the rest will follow. And trust me, it does happen. Be patient, as LeeAnn says as well. But once you start to do that, you also have to create a sense of a community between the different clients that you're working with, that the first client is not your only client, that you have these other clients that you're selling to and are joining the platform as well.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very good. I mean, there is a question in the Q&A, and I'm gonna mention it right away. One thing we talk about, and LeeAnn does mention it. It takes time to create that relationship, and I truly believe this is, a customer relationship is like a personal relationship. It takes time to establish trust. So when you're in sales, automatically you want to attach that time to a sales cycle, right? And when can I forecast it, and when can it comes in? And so, LeeAnn, do you have an average of time in your type of organization on how long it takes from the first introduction meeting to actually doing a deal? So you mentioned hackathon. So hackathon is pretty structured program to actually have a deal done at the end, or a POC or a pilot. So in your mind, do you have any idea of timeline or time frame to help these people on the phone?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm just trying to think of some examples. I've partnered with startups where they've worked very well, and I've partnered with startups where they haven't. And the ones that have worked well, from start to finish, to get a deal, it's probably anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But I don't do a deal without a proof of concept. Because, as I go back, there's a credibility issue in reputation for someone that doesn't have, the experience or doesn't have the client base. But, if you find a partner that is willing to go to the end of the earth to help you with your problem, and you believe, the one thing you will get from an enterprise is they have a lot of technologists that know technology. They have a lot of architects that understand kind of the patterns, how you would integrate the challenges, whether it be data in transit or data at rest. So that can be an added advantage for startups coming into the company. So I would say 3 to 6 months. But the upfront is more around getting to know the company, understanding their offering, how would you go to market with the product, depending on if it's a back end solution or a front end. So there's a lot of things that need to come into play. But I've seen it 3 to 6, and I've seen some. If you have the client references, it's much quicker.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot pilot and POC, and again, I sit on both sides, on the enterprise and on a small company. When you say POC, do you accept that there is a cost, that the startup is running in a very limited amount of cash? So is cost definitely an expectation for you? I think everybody wants to.
The cost is usually minimal, and I'd offset the cost to a longer term contract, right? So we'd pay it up front, and then it would offset the longer term contract. It really kind of depends at what stage the startup is at, right? If we're the first client, then probably not. I'm more about the interest and the opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to forego a good opportunity because of it's cost prohibitive. I don't think we can do that. And in the environment that we're in today, we need to be able to make decisions quickly and identify solutions, because things are changing so rapidly, that we need to be flexible and we need to be able to pivot.
That's a very, very good answer. Veera, do you have any comments around the answer of LeeAnn?
Yeah, I absolutely totally agree with what LeeAnn's been saying. And there was another technique that I used in Proxer, which was our first client was somebody called the Department of Work and Pensions, which is the largest employer in Europe, something like 300,000. And rather than trying a proof of concept, what we did was we agreed with them that if we built a system to their specific needs and requirements, that we could then reuse for all of the other public sector clients that we have in the community. They agreed what was called a memorandum of understanding, is if we built it, they would come and use it. So we had that legally agreed up front, which gave us the confidence to be able to actually spend our own money and build a platform, knowing full well that they would join it and become our anchor customer. So there's another way of doing effectively what would also be the same as a proof of concept, but with a lot more commitment sat behind it. Equally within Circulor, we did something where it was akin to a proof of concept, but we wanted to be able to target a specific sector where the supply chain was quite complex. So we wanted to be able to prove that the platform could work across multiple sectors, but starting in the auto space to prove that it works. So with that client, what we agreed was effectively a set of special rates to encourage them to be the first early adopter, and also that every time we had a new functionality being released or a new set of capabilities that we'd learned to be able to add to the platform to encourage other customers to join, that they would have first rights of becoming the pioneer customer for those innovations as well.
No, very, very good. I mean, this is very informative. I mean, I have a couple of notes here. So as you all know, this panel is under the 500 startup banner. And 500 Startup recent survey of 199 founders show that female founders specifically identify customer acquisition as their greatest struggle. I don't know if there is any link necessarily to the gender, but Veera, you have 2 decades of experience in technology. Have you seen in those 20+ years enough stacks to be a woman in tech? And is it changing? I mean, I would believe it is changing, but do you have any opinion on that?
Sure, absolutely. You just gave away my age then. But,
oh, yeah. It's not about age. It's not about age. It's about experience. It's about experience.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've seen huge amounts of change. I think the 2 biggest areas are probably around the use of social media, which has had a massive impact, positive and negative, on how we market and how we communicate progress and change and the way in which we sell to clients. But the challenge there also becomes how we manage the policies around the use of social media, both within the organization and externally by individuals, that doesn't bring reputational damage to the company. And we've seen so much in the press where individuals in senior level positions have mistweeted something or inappropriately commented on something. So that's had a massive negative impact on corporate branding and so on. So there's a whole set of policies that we'd never had before that we now need to take and pay attention to. The other is in terms of the role of women in tech. I'm seeing, a significant increase in female-led tech-enabled businesses across multiple different types of sectors, particularly in terms of financial services, but also more women working in key technology roles, such as, for example, data science, analytics, big data, which I think is a real blessing because we bring so much diversity of thought and talent. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would like to comment on is that we shouldn't just focus on having women in specific roles. I think it's about diversity of talent and diversity of skill. So we should be talking about a much broader agenda, because the diversity of skill brings the ability for companies not just to grow quickly, but also to think about the impacts that they have on what the client does, how the client behaves, but also broadens out the breadth and depth of the skills base in terms of the company itself. Mm-hmm.
LeeAnn, I mean, you're on the other side on the large corporation, and obviously over the past 10 years, the gender and diversity is becoming a key part of the overall message and strategy. Have you seen any impact in your organization? I know you're a champion of this type of activities. I mean, is that something you would like to share about how you deal with this conversation in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what Veera said. It's not just women. So I'm one of the executive sponsors for Women in Technology at Manulife, and we look at just different learning opportunities, access to training, and different events specific to technology. But what's interesting is it's not just women showing up to the event. So I think there's a real need to have a community of practice where people can learn new skills, have different ways of thinking, and just different opportunities. But, as you know, in large companies, there's different employee resource groups, which provide different opportunities. And, we have many different resource groups. So I think it's important for people to participate, whether it's a community at work or a community outside, because I think there's a lot of opportunities to create that diverse thinking and opportunities. But I believe we all play a role in helping people in their career. I'm a big believer in owning your career, but I think, other people have helped us. We need to sponsor people along the way, sponsor and mentor.
That's awesome. It's music to my ear. So I'm gonna open it to the Q&A. I mean, there is a bunch of questions right now. So I'm gonna pick up some. I'm not gonna mention the name of the person asking the question. One very specific to sales. What are some of the founders and our BD team early errors, mistakes when launching enterprise sales? So that goes for both, right? For Veera and LeeAnn, in the sense that what's the biggest mistake, LeeAnn? Like, if there is a sales guy that comes in, and it's not necessarily has to be from a startup, but I'm sure you probably have like do and don'ts list. I have a feeling. And on the Veera side, I mean, in your experience, did you make any mistake? And it's all sharing mistakes is good here. It's about, learning from the mistake and how we can adapt it. So LeeAnn, go first.
Okay, so I'm going to be completely honest here. One of the things that I've seen with salespeople when they come in, they drop a lot of names. I know this person, I know that person. When you're meeting a prospective client for the first time, I think you really need to focus on that meeting. And really, I think I mentioned it earlier, really know the business, know the products, know the competitors, know as much about the company, and really make it an attentive meeting where you really want their business. And, I think stories help back up, sales, right? So, if there's been opportunities, Veera, I liked your idea about early adopter on, price. I mean, I think that's great for startups, but, it's almost like, what can you do for me, as you come into the meeting? So that's just some of the things that I've seen.
Very good. Yeah.
Absolutely agree with all of that. And I think some of the more softer stuff, in addition to everything that LeeAnn said, think about what you're wearing to the meeting. Think about who you're taking with you and choreograph what questions you're going to ask and who's going to take notes, and paying full attention to the client that you're trying to fully engage with. So you're listening actively. So not just constantly writing stuff down. So somebody takes notes and you do the questions and so on. Listen to what they're saying to you. So don't just try and pitch the solution in the way that you see it should be operating. It may be that you've missed a nuance as to how they might want to use the solution for themselves to solve their business problem. So actively listening.
Very good. I have a similar question that come back a couple of times is around, and I think we did answer it by doing research, but who do you suggest when you're approaching an enterprise customer? Where do you start? Do you start on the top or do you start on the bottom? Do you go to a business line or you go to the technical side of the business? Is there a secret sauce that you guys can recommend? It's a little bit of all, and do your research and find the right speaker. Veera, you can start. What's your strategy?
Absolutely. There's no easy answer. Every industry sector is very different and their challenges are very different. If you can find a way to get to the person with the burning platform, so the burning issue that they have to resolve, and you can get to that through media, through understanding what's happening by following the company, that might be your starting point. But without that, it would be multi-level selling. So it would be the CPOs, the CTOs, the CEOs, for example. It could be the more junior members of staff that could become your sponsors because they're on their career trajectory. So you have to think quite strategically about how you enter into that organization's frame of reference. Secondly, you also need to have the language where you can have a conversation based on their viewpoints of what their requirement is from their perspective of what would make them sleep better at night. And that used to be a technique I used quite a lot. What can I do to make you sleep better at night? And it was so powerful because it showed that you're willing to just listen and you were there to be their friend.
Very good. LeeAnn?
So, I mean, that's a tough question. It depends on the organization and the problem that you're trying to solve for. I think if you can find the decision makers, within the enterprise. I mean, I have a lot of people coming to me as a CIO, but I don't really make any decisions without my business at the table. So it's almost joint. Procurement, when you think about procurement in large corporations, they're after the fact once kind of the legwork has been done. So it's really like, who do you think this startup would appeal to, in which part of the business, et cetera. So, I mean, I think you need to kind of do your research on where do you go first. I mean, if it's infrastructure related, you're going to go to a CTO, right? But if it's product related, if it's a website or payments or something like that, you may go to someone in operations. You really have to do your research and know your audience. I think knowing your audience will help you get a seat at the right table.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, and it brings me to another question, which I think it goes behind or beyond the startup level. But what is the red flag when the corporation is going to move away from the deal? And is there, let's say, we engage and then suddenly you're not answering the phone yet. Is that a red flag? I know it is, but is there other red flags such as, not delay into allocating resources to the pilot? Mm-hmm. Or, do we say clearly the project is dead or we are moving forward to somebody else? How do you, with your experience, deal with the situation?
So I think there's a couple of things you need to think about, and it needs to be mutual. But for large enterprises, there's always a risk assessment. If you're to become a client, a partner of the enterprise, so you've got to be aware of what that risk assessment is, right, and be willing to do that. If you're not willing upfront, this is where it protects the broader enterprise, right? Whether it's data encryption, SOC 2, external audit, et cetera. So I think that's really important. The other thing over a period of time is, for the enterprise, they need to get that level of comfort. So whether it's your ability to scale, it really depends on, the solution or the underlying technology. So I think there's a couple of things, and also follow through. If you're following up with the startup and they're not available, or as I said, so-and-so is only available on Mondays and Thursdays. I mean, there are things that would cause you concern. I think what's really helped is any startups that we partner with, we do a stand-up every day, like 15 minutes. The same people need to show up. And, before we even go into thinking about partnering, we'd have criteria on what success would look like. And it's mutually decided in the time frame of, what is the duration you'd evaluate success, and, what would drive a go decision.
Yeah,
so
that's great. Is that best practices for you, LeeAnn? I mean, is it what you will recommend any startup to come in without you asking for it? But like the standard, I love this idea of meeting every day, even if it's 5-10 minutes, but at least to establish that relationship, honestly, and then addressing the goal. Do you consider that as best practices, and everybody should do that?
No, it's what works, and it gives you insights into the teams, right? No solution is perfect. So you're always going to run into bumps along the way, but I think there needs to be a willingness to call out those bumps and, how do you work? It's not, the startup versus the enterprise working to solve it, right? Because the enterprise will have their environment and the startup will be working in their environment. It's really kind of coming together, partnering, deciding on a mutual approach, to kind of keep it moving. So I think it really helps. And in this day and age, there's nothing better than a quick 15 minutes versus sending an email, sending a PowerPoint with update status.
No, I think it's great. Veera, you have any comments on that? I mean, do you guys use that as best practices on your side?
Oh, I would totally agree. So internally, we have a daily stand-up, and that's just about coordinating the team and setting the priorities for the different sales approaches, the bids that we're working on. What we also learned from was we were part of we got selected by the Boeing ATI Accelerator program, which effectively is about 10 startups. And what they taught us, and what became a really powerful tool for us, was a regular cohort gathering, which meant that we were not only keeping GKN and Boeing up to date with what we were doing and scoping projects with them, they also helped us leverage their network to be able to become a part of a community, which was about sharing experiences and motivating each other to keep going.
This is very good. There is a question that very much focused on you, Veera, is how do you negotiate, or not really, how do you negotiate pricing with your first client? I mean, do you come with an established price in your mind, or is it something that's going to go through the motion of your conversation with your customer?
Absolutely fantastic question. We had an inkling of what we should be pricing this at, and because we're in a new market and the client was entering into a new solution that had never been tried before, we both went into it with an open mind of what I would call transparent open book accounting. So we laid out all of our costs, and they told us what they were willing to pay in terms of their procurement purchase levels, and and they equated that to the value that they would get from using the platform for the traceability of just one material, which was cobalt, which they had a problem with. We agreed a price point and said, let's review it at the end of 6 months once you start live usage. If it's not appropriate, we committed legally that we would review it and change it together. Thankfully, the pricing model worked, and we're still continuing to review that as we enter into the same solution but for different clients. We've tweaked it a little bit based on our experience of what worked and what didn't work with our first early adopters, but generally we've settled on a fixed setup cost for configuring the platform ready for the client's use to suit their situation. And then once they go live, they go into a fixed annual subscription model, which means they can safely budget for future years for their use of the platform, and not worry about price per transaction, because that negates the way in which you would want a client to use a platform. So there are things there that are worth bearing in mind. Is what are the things that are going to be attractive to the client to become your early adopters? What are the metrics that you need as a company in terms of scalability that is about managing your own cost base? And thirdly, in terms of what are the things that you need to put into your pricing models that would enable your clients to maximize their use of the platform, so you make yourself stickable because you're creating benefit, and therefore it's harder for them to rip you out.
No, it's very good answer. LeeAnn, I'm going to change a little bit the question then. Is did you ever got a price sticker shock, as we say, by a startup coming in and expecting a certain size of deal, or is it something you go with them and try to negotiate? Also obviously a win-win situation, but how do you deal with startups that have never priced a large corporation like yours?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So Veera, what you were talking about, the all-in cost, that makes it more amenable. Do you know what I mean? When it's subscription based. So, it really depends on how they're pricing initially. But I normally, because I've been in this business for a while, I kind of have a number in the back of my head when I'm talking and negotiating. And, also with the business, I'll speak with the business on the willingness, to pay, because there are other ancillary costs, regardless if it's an all-in, it's subscription, there's support. It really depends on what your price covers. So it's really more about just understanding the total cost of ownership and what's covered in the price. But normally with startups, there's not been anything that I've seen to date where there's sticker shock, because what I've seen is they're very willing to work with you. Right?
Is it about the reference, you think, or is it about expansion into your, because I mean, if you do a pilot, usually you're not going to do like a enterprise license for every part. So are they looking at you as also a way to expand into your organization?
I think it's a combination of both. I think there potentially could be wins on both sides with the enterprise and with the startup. And I think it opens doors for both, right? Because when I speak to startups or even vendors, I'm looking to solve a problem for my business. And time to market is of the essence, right? A lot, as you move into agile, you want solutions to be quick. The multi-year spend idea seems to be going away, and you want to invest in 1 year and deliver benefits in 1 year, in that same year, right? And I think this is where startups can be very beneficial, providing they tick the box in other areas. But, I think that's a consideration as well. What problem are they solving? What is the time to market? And what is the overall cost and the complexity of integrating into the organization?
Veera, when you look at this response from LeeAnn, are you in agreement that landing an enterprise customer is about the reference, is about expanding into the customer? Why are you so focused on landing your first large enterprise customer? Is it about validating your solution, or is it about growing it to other large corporations?
It's absolutely about both of those. Initially, it's about landing the first enterprise client in a specific area. And it might be, as you say, a limited scope proof of concept pilot. That allows the client to build trust in you. Once they go live, it's about building an account plan with the client to manage the expansion of the solution into the enterprise level, and manage it very carefully in phase stages, so that not only do you do what I call train the trainer, you enable all of the teams internally using the solution to be able to understand how it works, to adopt it, and then to help you roll it out. Once they've started using it as an enterprise solution, in our example, because we're tracing specific raw materials, our strategy was to do it for one material to start with, cobalt. We're now expanding it to Micah. We're now expanding it to Nicole. So we're actually growing the business whilst we're growing our client account as well. And we're doing the same approach with quite a lot of our other clients. We're not trying to do enterprise straight away. We're focused specifically on starting at one point in time, and then using that as an account. What that also requires us to be is, and this is something that we've learned over the years, is that we have to be absolutely disciplined about not just doing the first piece and running away. It's building that long-term relationship. So we have a joint account plan with the client to be able to do this as an enterprise level solution that they have confidence in, that they have confidence in using, not just with their suppliers, but with their clients, with their stakeholders, with their consumers.
No, it's very good. There's a question that I think is, and we address it in some way, but I think it's so powerful. And Veera, this is for you. And I'll take the specific example of Circulor with Volvo. When you get to your first enterprise customer, are you telling them they are your first one? Did you tell them?
We absolutely did. We said that they were our pioneer, and the agenda that was important to them right at the board level, that was absolutely resonant to what we stood for as a business, was about empowering and embracing traceability, sustainable traceability in their supply chain. And that was also their top priority objective at the board level. So we were very open with them that they would be our first pioneer customer, and we would do absolutely everything, move heaven and earth, to make sure that they could absolutely tick that box. Not only did they tick the box, we entered an innovation award with them as our client, and they won the award for the best innovation project in sustainability last year.
Yeah, no, I know it's a great story, and I encourage everybody on the call to actually check out Circulor and what we do. But it's a very good answer. So LeeAnn, let me turn this question to you. And you mentioned it already, and I knowing you value honesty in relationships. So you will expect them to tell you the truth rather than finding out. But is it a no-no to be the first one? I mean, the first large corporation. And then the sub question is will you consider a startup that has no customer yet because they are backed by a partner, by a technology partner, or by a VC partner, or things like that? What's your answer around this possible red flag?
Yeah, so I don't see that as a red flag. I'm really thinking about the all-in and what their solution is. And I love, Veera, that you referred to your first customer as a pioneer. So I think that's great. And that really speaks to, kind of the current in starting the partnership and build a longer term partnership. I mean, really, you're looking at, in technology, we're looking to enable the business. And, if the pitch is going to help me enable the business, why wouldn't I consider it? I mean, when you think about enterprise, we develop a lot in-house, on a daily basis. It's, and sometimes it works really well, and sometimes we miss the mark. But, I think we need to be open.
I mean, that's so encouraging for all the people on the phone call, to be honest with you. So, LeeAnn, out of curiosity, in the last 6 months, have you done any, and I mean, obviously there is compliance and things like that, but have you done any transaction with what we will call startups, or small companies with very few customers and with the technology that's there to disturb or disrupt any type of processes? So
I'm just going to say we're always looking. And there is always opportunity. So yeah, no, I mean, I have a team that looks at emerging technologies.
Yeah.
And we meet with different VC partners on a regular basis. And then through word of mouth, people will mention different opportunities or what's going on in the industry, and you should look at this, et cetera. So we are open. My group is in looking at it. And sometimes I think the ideas and the discussion is very different. There's an internal perspective that every enterprise has, but you also need the external perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think teams learn a lot when you have both. We look from the inside out, but we also have to look from the outside in. to determine the best solution.
And I will finish on that with you, LeeAnn. Is do you receive a lot of requests from the business side saying, well, I heard about these great startups that can help me in my life. Can you look at them? Is that one of the big process right now that you're going through?
Yeah. So if someone on the business says so-and-so reached out, you know, I don't normally I don't understand technology, you know, is this something we should look at? And, you know, I will always do them, you know, provide the opportunity to spend time with their recommendations. Because I never want to have regrets, right?
That's awesome.
I want to be the pioneer.
Here we go. Here we go, Veera.
So I think it's important.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Veera, you created a trend right now, right there. Great. So to you, Veera, yeah, we are about to finish. I mean, we have 3 more minutes. So is there a last word you would like to share with the people on the phone and with LeeAnn and myself?
Absolutely. I think the message I'd like to share would be that this is my second startup, having vowed that I would never do it again. I think the thing to remember is that it is hard, and let's not forget about that, but it is rewarding, and it's great to actually remember the journey that you're on. So don't be a stress bucket. You know, lean on other people, try not to do everything yourself. You know, use the skills around you and hire the best people that you possibly can that will elevate your business and help you as well.
That's awesome. LeeAnn, do you have like a couple thoughtful idea to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, Veera, I agree with everything that you've said. And even though I'm coming at it from, you know, the corporate world, I think what's important is I admire anyone that jumps into a startup, whether you're the founding member or working in a team as a startup. There is that level, there's that energy that I see on a daily basis. But I would say be patient. If you believe in the solution, you know, you will be successful. I really believe that. And I would say just keep doing what you're doing and make sure there's a level of governance, not to the point where it creates bureaucracy, but when you come and knock at the door of an enterprise, you have to be prepared. And I would say, you know, focus on that. And good luck to everyone.
I love it. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you to Veera. Thank you to LeeAnn. Thank you to Startup 500. There is some additional questions that we will answer and send back to whoever asked the questions. And again, thank you very much. This will be on replay on oracle.com/startups, and I believe on YouTube under the 500 Startups channel. So again, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.